So, are you a flat earther or just an investigator? Or
Flat Earther.
okay. How long have you been a flat earther for?
Since back in November.
Back in November, okay.
November of 1996.
1996?
Yeah.
Wow, what's your story with that? How'd you find out?
I'm trying to think of the short version. Well, I'll just say through Robotham's book is what converted me.
You found Robotham's book back in 1996. You read it and that just like turned on the light for you.
Yeah, on the first chapter.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a whole story of how I came to that book, but I mean, like, how long do you want me to go?
Oh, I don't care. That's all interesting to me.
Because the last guy that asked me to explain it, I said it was a short version, and he gave up. He was like, that. I mean, dude, we got to stop the video. So,
1996, though, that's a long time. Have you told other people about that, or is that kind of more of a recent thing that where you're telling people about the flat Earth, or?
No, I mean, it was in 2015 around it started to blow up and a lot of more people came to it.
Yeah.
So it's, in society, it became easier to talk about it since that time.
Yeah.
So
have you like kind of kept it in the closet the whole time, or?
I wouldn't say in the closet. I mean, if somebody put me to the point, I talk about it. I was never ashamed of it.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, I was I call into Strange World regularly. My name's Dennis.
Okay. Oh yeah, Dennis.
Okay, he Mark Sargent. He says, "Yeah, I'm a truck driver at night."
Okay.
So
you're the truck driver. Okay.
That's me. That's me. So yeah. So yeah, some people are more charismatic. I'm more into research. I mean, generally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think every flat earther is. It seems that way. We don't really just jump into flat Earth because someone told us to, and we automatically believe them.
Yeah, it was a reaction against somebody for something, and I was like, it was, I don't know, it just, the shape of the Earth wasn't what I had on mind. It was spiritual and holy and godly things, and somebody gave me a commentary, and the very first book I chose to study in that commentary was Ecclesiastes. And in the very first chapter, around verse 5 and 6, it started talking about astronomy. And if all I had the Bible, I never would have paid any attention to it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But the commentary that this person gave to me, I think that kind of backfired on them in a total way, because I was going to a church for a while, but it was in the middle of a longer term, serious search for a church. And this one night when I started to read that Bible commentary, it started a side search. This was back in the 90s. So my search for a church started in 92, and it ended in 99, which is a whole other story, which I won't go into, but I'll just say that it ended with the Eastern Orthodox Church. But the side search started because they started acting embarrassed. The Bible commentary, which is called, I think it's the Believer's Bible Commentary by William MacDonald, which is a Protestant piece of garbage. And when they started acting embarrassed, as if hey folks, don't think necessarily that the Bible's out of touch with modern astronomy, it's nothing to be, well, I was like, okay, I see where it was going, it was obvious.
The Bible says something, but he's embarrassed by what the Bible says, and so he's trying to cover it up?
What the commentary's attitude was unacceptable. So two or three things happened right there on the spot, on that moment. Number one, I became a geocentrist permanent for life. A spherical geocentrist at that time. And the second thing was I took the commentary and ripped it in two and donated it to the garbage can. And the third thing was I began searching for other people that were like-minded. And although I did find a couple of spherical geocentric organizations, one Catholic in Europe and another Protestant, later on. They were too late, because the first thing I found for a long time was at the library, and Gale Research publishes the 3-volume Encyclopedia of Associations. Forgive me if I'm detailed.
You're fine. You're fine.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But among geoscience organizations was listed the Flat Earth Research Society International. And this is not the internet era Flat Earth Society, which a lot of this movement is turned off again. This was the original, good, genuine Flat Earth Society, the real McCoy.
Yeah.
Well, Charles Johnson, who was the final president of it, he died in 2001. This is in 95, I found this. And at the time, I'll just conclude by saying it was above and beyond what I was looking for. I was extreme. I was never against it, but it was above and beyond, so I say, yeah, it's above and beyond. But in a year and a half, I never found anybody else. I hadn't found these 2 other organizations yet. And so finally I wrote back to him, I was like, show me what you got. And he sent me a flyer, and it had a reference, the common standard flyer he sent out, and it had a reference in it to a Newsweek interview where he was interviewed for Newsweek magazine back in like 1984. So I went to the library and found that article, and I photocopied it. A lot of articles it found out in the 1970s and 1980s, which mainstream publications or mainstream science publications, which publicized the genuine Flat Earth Society and Flat Earth movement, as minuscule as it was back then, it made it well known. All those articles were written by one guy, Robert Shoneville, who was not a flat earther. He's an evolutionist, but he's not a hater. He writes objectively, and he was friends with Charles Johnson and other flat earthers. He was a respectable man. I came to know him personally. I never talked with Charles Johnson except through correspondence. I did call his house one time in 2000, I think, when he was still alive. And this woman named Jill answered the phone, who was technically the last president. I think it's caretaker, but she was the last president of the old Flat Earth Society, which goes back to the 1800s. But the Internet Flat Earth Society, which has a lot of problems. It's founded by Daniel Shinton in around 2005, Internet forums. Anyway, but when I got this to finish how it got converted, that Newsweek article from 1984, it referenced a book first published as a full volume in 1865 called Earth Not a Globe, which is the foundation of the Flat Earth Society movement of the 19th century, which the whole movement started off of that one book, which he had studied decades to perfect. There had a second, more full edition came out in the 1870s. You could buy both editions online, find them online for free, or buy them through Amazon, whatever. But this Earth Not a Globe, on the very first chapter, I converted to Flat Earthism. And it showed in November of 1996 I read it.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Awesome.
Eventually, I should say, one thing that's worth, in my case, I had started to make big changes in my life around 92 and started searching for a church. But I did come across in 92, most of the search had started in 93, but I just remember coming across in Webster's Biographical Dictionary back in 92, a reference to, this is biographical, so it's talking about people, Cosmas Indicopleustes, who was a Byzantine geographer in the 6th century. In other words, in the 500s, in the time of Emperor Justinian, who wrote, and it said something like, it didn't mention flat Earth, it just said he wrote a book about Byzantine geography against the pagan view of the world. And it was written against that to debunk, refute. In 1997, I came across that name again, just after I converted to Flat Earth from Robotham's book. Robotham is basically, I got into history a lot, so I can say Robotham is basically represents, he's 19th century, he represents the Protestant form of Flat Earthism. Because the original Protestant reformers were savagely anti-flat Earth.
Yeah.
That's a historical fact. So Protestant flat earthism didn't come along until the 19th century through Robotham. And the Gleason's map and all that is based on Robotham. Robotham's the one who launched the movement. And Robert Schottewald, that journalist who's objective, he wrote a history of the whole movement. It's online for free, called Plain Truth, a history of the flat earth movement. And that's online in PDF for free by Robert Schottewald. I think Robert J. Schottewald. Anyway, I had a couple phone conversations and correspondence with him, which I still have, back in the late 90s. But you may have heard there's a book that's well known called The Flat Earth, The History of an Infamous Idea by Christine Garwood.
I haven't heard of this book yet.
But shit, that's the one that's been tossed around, that it's a history of the modern flat earth movement in the 19th century and 20th century. Shit, by her own admission, her book is based on the research of primarily of Robert Schottewald.
Oh, wow.
So Robert Schottewald was the man who did the archival getting into it. It's just like you hear often the New York Times is recycled news. Well, that's what Christine Garwood's book is compared to Robert Schottewald's. It's just recycled. Robert Schottewald was the one who did the original digging and finding of the stuff. So anyway, but that's for the modern flat earth movement. But I say for the final thing that for Cosmas Endicopleustis, I got his book later that year in '97, and that prefaced the end of my search for a church, which ended with the Orthodox Church in 1999. Because his book represents the consensus, the majority of the early church fathers in the early church, which was flat earth. And there's differences in those two models. Robotham represents the Protestant model, and Cosmas Endicopleustis on the early Christian model.
Wow. Yeah, sounds like you've really, really been looking into this.
That's the short version.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. Thank you.
Yep.